Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. We're inching closer to football season, but today we're going to take a look over at the hardwood. Bobby Buckets Riddell from the Purdue Radio Network, former Purdue walk-on extraordinaire, will join the show today. He's become a somewhat frequent guest here on the podcast. It's a really fun conversation. We look back on the season that was, relive some moments from the past 4 seasons of Braden Smith, Fletcher, Loyer, Trey, Kaufman-Renn, and we turn the page, looking ahead at what's next, talking about the upcoming Vancouver trip, some reasons for excitement and optimism, but also some reasons to be maybe a little concerned. So some areas that Purdue really needs to prove itself in order to have the type of season that Purdue and its fans want to have here in 2026. I think you're really going to enjoy this interview. Bobby was excellent. A couple housekeeping notes, but first, if you don't already, come follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world of college sports. We have Big Ten Media Days coming up. That's going to be the central focus of next week's episode. Be sure to subscribe. We're talking all things Purdue sports. You don't want to miss an episode. Follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And I'm always taking submissions, questions, things you want me to talk about. You can email the show, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com, or send me a message on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Couple of quick things, though. It does look like there will be streams of at least some of Purdue's games on this trip to Vancouver. That gets going this Saturday. Purdue plays on the 25th, 26th, 28th, and 29th. My tentative plan is to talk about this trip at the end of it. I would like to have an episode where I talk about what I saw, what I observed. I'll obviously be watching from thousands of miles away here in Indiana. I will not be in Canada. Please remember, as you watch these games, though, context is really important. I have no idea the level of competition that Purdue will be playing on this. This could be the best kids from Canada. This could be really low-level Canadian college ball. I really have no idea. I'm not sure. Regardless, though, these will be games that Purdue is not doing detailed scouting reports on. There's not going to be a lot of game preparation. This is a roll the ball out and see how things go type of deal. So I would like to have an episode talking about it all, but I encourage you all, as you watch this, take it all for what it's worth. These games mean absolutely nothing. And as I said a little bit, next Monday's podcast is going to be a really fun one. We're going to preview Big Ten Media Days, but more so looking at where Purdue stands in the world of college football right now. For those of you who have listened to this show for a long time, you know that I'm a complete nerd about college sports, about every layer of the onion that exists. I love all of it. Whether it is the stuff going on in court, in Congress right now, I'm very interested in all of that. From recruiting to the transfer portal to the on-field stuff, I'm really into all of this. And as you look at the entire picture of college football right now, I'm going to try to whittle it down to where Purdue stands as we enter 2026 and where Purdue needs to be as we move closer to the future, into some future key dates that exist on the college football calendar. So that's going to kick off 5 preview episodes that'll take us into week 1, if you can believe it. We're almost there, and we'll have a basketball episode in there. Obviously, if any news breaks on the athletic director front, we'll have an emergency episode for that. So it's a long way of saying there's a lot of really good stuff going on right now. If you're not subscribed, you really should be. I think there's some really good stuff. After the break, though, it's time for Bobby Buckets Riddell. I think you're really going to enjoy this, guys. We'll talk to you next week. This episode is brought to you by me. Yes, me. When I'm not watching sports, or more accurately, talking about them with you all, I'm talking insurance with the people of Indiana. As an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, I want to help you protect what you've worked hard to achieve. From home and auto to life and business insurance, I'm here to help you. Give me a call at 317-846-5861 or email me, jordan.jones@infb.com, and let's protect you from life's everyday risks. All right, he joins us today. He scored a career-high 13 points against Penn State back in 2009. From the Purdue Radio Network, it's Bobby Buckets Riddell. He joins Boilers and Beyond again. He's become a regular guest of sorts over time. Bobby, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate you.
Hey, Jordan. Thanks for having me, and thanks for bringing up the 13-point performance in 2009 against the Nittany Lions. I typically try to go down memory lane with that one every once in a while. So, yeah, nice to bring that one to the forefront. That was a fun day.
Get the DVR recording from Big Ten Network or something, right?
Heck yeah, heck yeah, yeah. Gene Katie was on the call, I believe, that day.
There you go.
So that was pretty neat.
Back when every commercial was the Barbasol Motel 6 and the Rotel queso dip on the Big Ten Network back in the early days.
That's right. Yeah, that was early days, Big Ten Network. I think that might have been the first year for Big Ten Network, my senior year. So pretty cool.
They created it for you, Bobby. They created it for you.
Right.
But no, the last time we had you on the podcast, it was about Christmas time. Purdue had lost to Iowa State in fairly decisive fashion, and we talked about that. But I don't think we would have envisioned that Purdue would lose 4 or 5 more times at Mackey Arena that year and finish 6th in the Big Ten, but then turn around, win the Big Ten tournament, make a run to the Elite Eight. A bit of a roller coaster it was. As you look back, what do you kind of make of this past season, and how will you remember it with some of the expectations, some of the reality, the ups and downs, just in your mind, Bobby? How do you look back on this past season?
That's a great question. And I think you summed it up. My feelings pretty good as well, honestly. I think roller coaster would probably be a good description for the season as a whole and just kind of what I think about it. Because you're right. So much expectation coming in. So you're already starting off on this super high of what you're expecting, all those returning seniors, plus some other returners from the previous year, guys that have played in a Final Four and a national championship game. But then you've started off with a low point, even though the game didn't count, going to Kentucky in that exhibition game and losing in the fashion we did and just not really coming out looking very impressive, not clicking on all cylinders. It was an off shooting game for Purdue, but just didn't seem to have the same intensity that I thought I would see from our team. As I thought our guys as a veteran group were maybe going to try to go make a statement, prove why we're number one preseason, all that sort of stuff. And it didn't happen that night. And granted, a lot of that, when you shoot bad, it's hard to have a lot of additional motivation sometimes in those type of games and energy. So, and then yet, like you said, it was some highs. Like you go and win that tournament in around Thanksgiving time period, smoke a really good Texas Tech team, and then drop all those home games throughout the year, all the high profile home games in a place that we rarely ever lose. We just came up short in all those games, unfortunately. Sometimes the opponent, Keaton Wagler obviously comes to mind. Sometimes the opponent was just better that day and you got to tip your cap. But there was also some performances that were not our best. And then yet we started clicking. I felt like we, from a lineup standpoint, really found some things late in the year. Trey Kaufman-Renn started playing a little bit more of that small ball 5 as we got towards the latter part of the year. And it was kind of an interesting thunder and lightning approach, I thought, from our lineup construction. We had that thunder unit with Trey and Oscar to start games. And then we would go smaller at times and put Trey at the 5, kind of more of a lightning, offensive-minded approach. And we became really difficult to guard in those particular lineups. With Trey at the 5. That's really probably his sweet spot from an offensive position. When he's got shooting and spacing around him, he can either take a bigger guy like a Mara or Morez Johnson, as we saw in that Big Ten tournament championship game, take those guys off the dribble or use his footwork with the space. Or if he's got a smaller guy or a guy his size, he can use that physicality and that worked really well late in the year for that Big Ten tournament championship run, and then making the Elite Eight. And then unfortunately, just had one of those situations against Arizona. Trey gets in foul trouble, and we just kind of run out of steam there in that second half.
Yeah, it felt like that Arizona game, you know. It was unbelievable that Purdue was up at halftime.
Yeah,
It was late here. I remember taking my dog out at halftime thinking, my God, that first half couldn't have gone worse from a personnel standpoint, yet they're
right,
winning.
right.
And then Kaufman-Renn picks up that third foul right away, and it
That was a
you knew
killer.
you knew it was over, right? You knew that you had to take advantage of staying alive in that first half, and you weren't going to be able to do that against Arizona for 40 minutes.
No question. It just felt like to beat Arizona, you're going to need some production from Trey Kaufman-Renn at some point in that game. And yeah, because of the foul trouble, he could just never really get in the flow. He never got a chance to get any run. The one time in the first half they were going to go to that smaller lineup where he can be really successful offensively was literally the play where he gets the second
Yes.
foul for shoving off on the under out of bounds play. It was a ticky tack foul to some degree, but they got him for extending the arm a little bit. He shoves off, has to sub immediately back out. That was that opportunity for us to see if that smaller lineup was maybe going to work there. And then we just, yeah, never really got in the flow. He gets that third foul early. I think you end up seeing the same thing a little bit with Arizona the following game against Michigan. Jaden Bradley, one of their leaders, their stars, gets two fouls in the first half. He never gets in the flow. They fall behind. But yeah, that was tough. That second half was tough for us against Arizona because we had that lead. Trey gets the third foul. We still get a bucket or two kind of early, even after he comes out. And you're thinking, all right, maybe we can just hold on here until Trey can come back. And, they hit us with one of those runs there. And we just never were able to recover offensively. We couldn't find our groove.
How do you kind of view the season? I know there was a lot of talk, and it's not usually fair to go down the whole successful season, disappointing season, because it's complicated. It's very nuanced. But when you look back, how do you evaluate it?
I think whenever you have a team like that that's got super high expectations, if you can end the season with something to show for it from a hardware standpoint, I think you have to call it a success. If you're hanging a banner, if you're getting a trophy, with the team with that sort of expectations, it's hard not to call that a success to some degree because that's what every Purdue team goes into the season trying to accomplish is win a Big Ten regular season championship, a Big Ten tournament championship, and then make a Final Four, win that regional championship, and then try to win the national championship. So those are kind of the three main things. And this team was able to accomplish one of those things. They won that Big Ten tournament championship, and they beat a team that was an extremely impressive team, the Michigan Wolverines, who obviously became the national champions to do that. So they're going to hang a banner for that Big Ten tournament championship. They had that moment where they really showed what their ceiling was. And even though there were certainly some disappointing moments throughout the year, I still think it'd be hard not to call that a success in my mind, just because I was able to I was fortunate enough to win a Big Ten tournament championship my senior year, and I know how special that moment was and how much fun and how much pride we took in winning that championship. So I think those guys probably felt the same.
It had to be pretty fun, to be a part of the team for those 4 days in Chicago. It's the ultimate catching lightning in a bottle, right? Because you don't have time to prep for these games.
Right.
Yeah, and Purdue came in limping. Purdue had, I think, lost three of four down the stretch, and the one win was that win that felt like a bit of a loss at Northwestern.
Right.
Yet it comes out, throttles Northwestern, handles Nebraska comfortably, survives against UCLA, and then really took it to Michigan in that second half. It had to be fun to be with the guys and be around the team for all of that.
Right. It was definitely an enjoyable experience. Mine was actually a little bit unique. I unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, um, I wasn't able to be there the whole time
That's
because
right.
after we beat UCLA that evening, my fifth child, Violet, my daughter, was born. Surprisingly so, she came 3 weeks ahead of our scheduled C-section date. So I raced back from Chicago, was able to be with my wife and Violet in the hospital. And then I watched and listened on the radio some, of course, the next day from the hospital, that Michigan championship game. So I wasn't there for the championship, which of course bummed me out because it's such a neat moment for the team and would have been neat to be there. But I was in the right place. I had my priorities in place and was there with my family, and of course got to enjoy seeing the team be successful from afar. But you're right. I mean, was there most of the time? Was there those first three games? And it's a quick turnaround, right? Those guys, you get back to the hotel, you eat some dinner. The coaching staff, of course, is cramming as much as they can the opponent they're going to have the next day, and the way the coaching staff will handle it is they'll usually have some guys, working ahead of time based on the opponent that they'll probably put in a situation like Purdue's game in the semifinal when they're playing was UCLA, right, in the semifinal.
Yeah.
And Michigan is the team they expect, to probably face in the final. So the staff probably, I'm guessing, put, a good chunk of the resources from a prep standpoint on Michigan that day before for some of the support staff that are able to have their time to work on those sorts of things. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of just one of those things where you roll the ball out and see how it goes. And Purdue had shortened their rotation a little bit with postseason play, and I do think that was a piece of what allowed them to kind of get into a rhythm and have more success.
You had the chance to be around a really special 4-year group of seniors when you were playing with Robbie Hummel, Jawan Johnson, and Etwan Moore. And you had the opportunity for the last 4 years from the radio side of things to be around this senior group that, you can argue, you compare all day, but they're the winningest group in Purdue history with Fletcher, Loyer, Braden Smith, and Trey Kaufman-Renn. To me, they've established quite a legacy, and that's a complicated word sometimes, but as someone who's been around the program your whole life, how will you remember this group? How will they go down in the mind of Bobby Buckets Riddell?
Yeah, I'm going to think of them fondly. There's no doubt about that. Was fortunate from a radio standpoint to be there and watch a lot of winning. Those guys, as you said, the winningest group in from a class standpoint in Purdue history. All really good guys, all very enjoyable to be around on the road. One of the fun aspects of the radio crew is being able to travel with the team, being able to get to know these guys on a personal level, and that of course makes it that much more fun to root for them. And all those guys were stand-up guys and fun to have conversations with. And when you're around those guys for 4 years, you get exposed to them a lot. And I really appreciated getting the chance to watch those guys accomplish everything they did. And yeah, it's definitely a class that's going to go down as, if not the best, one of the best. And yeah, I've been pretty spoiled for the time period I've been there, being able to watch guys like Jaden Ivey and Zach Edey, and then it flows right into that great senior class. So it's going to be interesting next year, not doing games with Braden Smith running the show. You get pretty used to that guy out there doing incredible things. Was the best passer I've ever seen play college basketball, and of course set the all-time assist record, which was amazing. Although now that they're going to be probably transitioning to this 5-5, we don't know how long that record will stand, but it always have that nice little asterisk next to it as far as the guy who was able to accomplish it in a 4-year career. So always going to be something that I'll remember for a long time, was watching Braden, Trey, and Fletch and how those guys played. And then of course Oscar, him and Liam joined the fold late, but those guys were fun to be around as well.
I didn't prepare you for this question, but we'll take away the 2024 NCAA tournament with winning up in Detroit and getting to the Final Four. Is there a favorite moment or favorite memory you have from this senior class over the last 4 seasons?
Ooh, I mean, so many good ones. I would probably say, I mean, it's hard not to think about that Big Ten tournament championship over Michigan, just considering who Michigan was, what Michigan ended up accomplishing, what Michigan had done to us in Mackey Arena. What that Michigan team was so dynamic, and we were able to really, punk them that day. That second half was incredible. They couldn't stop us offensively. We were scoring at will. I think Trey and Braden were basically just taking turns, going to work. It's hard not to think about that game, but I also just think about Braden. Trey was certainly a piece on that team his freshman year, but he was coming off the bench and not as big of a piece of the puzzle. But Braden and Fletch, the way they performed out in Portland as true freshmen, we're going out there and we're like, hey, this Zach Edey guy looks like he's gonna be pretty good. We're thinking, but Braden and Fletch, two starting guards as freshmen, and you got to play West Virginia, Gonzaga, Duke, and you're like going out there, and I'm thinking, I haven't seen those guys a lot at that point, and I'm thinking, man, it'd be really nice just to go out there and have solid performances and maybe win a game or two, and for us just to steamroll people, and for those guys to be dynamite right away. And obviously Zach was phenomenal as well, but I think I'll always just think about how well those guys played right away and how impressive that was.
It's a good transition too, because Purdue was a pretty decent unknown going into that season. You knew Zach Edey was good, but you hadn't seen him in that featured role. He'd split minutes with Travion Williams before that. Aside from him, you had no clue. And Purdue's kind of in that position here where you know who CJ Cox and Jakari Harris are. You know who Omer Meyer and Daniel Jacobson are. You saw Raleigh Burgess play, even if it's been a year since that point when he was fighting through a broken foot playing out there. Purdue's a massive unknown coming into this season. What are some of the areas that you're most interested in keeping an eye on here as they practice this summer, as they get ready to play this season? What are some of the areas of intrigue that stand out to you?
You're right. It's so much intrigue, so much unknown coming to this season. I think it's great that the team's going to get a chance to go to Canada here pretty soon. I think at the end of this month, early um, early next month as well, and get a chance to play those games against the teams in Canada and just get game experience with this new group of characters. Because what I'm most intrigued about, I think, is kind of to see what the pecking order is going to be from an offensive standpoint. Who are the role definition? Who are some of these guys that are really gonna take that jump into primary roles? These last couple of years, it's been pretty set in stone that Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn were going to be 1A, 1B from an offensive usage standpoint. And then Fletcher Loyer was right there as the second, number two. And then everybody else was kind of falling into place and just going to take their opportunities as they come and play off of those guys. And those three guys are gone. So there's three primary offensive roles that are up for grabs. I certainly think we feel like CJ Cox is poised to probably get one of those. Omer Meyer, at least on paper right now, feels poised to get one of those. But there's still so much to be determined, so much competition that's going to take place in these practices. And then just in these games, I'll be interested to see which guys flourish, see what the coaching staff, feels like those players. Obviously, we'll get a little bit of a tell from what the coaching staff thinks of these guys based on, who starts and the rotations and who's playing more minutes out there. And it's going to be great competition. I think there's so many talented guys in this team, but so many guys that are either unproven from a standpoint of they haven't played college basketball yet, or unproven in the role they are going to want to play. CJ Cox is probably the closest thing, but even he, was a fourth or fifth option a lot of times when he was on the floor. And now we're talking about him being, a top three option most likely. And so that's just a different, now you have the primary perimeter defender guarding you. That's a lot different than having the third or fourth, best defender on the floor guarding you. And I think then the other thing I'm intrigued about is just the front court. You and I were talking about this a little bit off air before we started. Just so much up for grabs there from a front court standpoint. You lose Trey Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Clough. Those guys gobbled up a ton of the minutes there in the front court. So a lot of opportunity available there, but a lot of unknown. Daniel Jacobson got quite a bit of opportunity last year, but in his first full season of college basketball, coming off breaking his leg, his true freshman year, he definitely had his ups and downs, certainly had some bright moments, but then towards the end of the season, we definitely saw him struggle Didn't play as much in the rotation towards the end of the year. Raleigh Burgess, like you mentioned, redshirted last year. He had a similar leg injury to that Daniel Jacobson had. He showed a couple nice moments of his true freshman year when he got a chance to play, but overall looked like he needed more time from a preparation, from a physicality standpoint to improve. But it looks like he's had some nice moments so far in practices this summer. Sounds like they may potentially add someone else to the fold. We'll have to see. But depth at this point is important. Sanan Wan, the true freshman, will be interesting to see how his development goes. But it's really usually pretty difficult for big guys early in their career to make huge impacts, just because I feel like the development of big guys takes a little bit longer than guards. So Caden Pierce, the transfer from Princeton, on paper feels like he probably has a pretty good chance to start at that power forward position. Ivy League Player of the Year a couple of years ago. I think the big question for me with him is how good is that outside shot going to be this year? I think from what I've seen, he's got a lot of nice qualities as far as that body, the athleticism, being able to take guys off the dribble at that power forward spot, use his speed and quickness to his advantage. But if you're not making that outside shot at a consistent level, are teams really going to respect you and guard you the same way? Or you can have those same driving lanes available if teams are sagging off you, things of that nature. And then Jack Benner is probably that other guy that's in the mix. Played some small ball power forward last year. I thought he did some really nice things in that role at times. Obviously, when you have that power forward position, when you have someone there who's, we used to have a ton of success with the guys like Robbie Hummel and Vince Edwards in that role, who were capable of shooting the three, playing off the dribble, getting a defensive rebound, pushing in transition, being super versatile at that spot, being another offensive creator. I think that's what made that small ball lineup so effective last year at times. When you had Jack at the four, because now you had four guys on the perimeter who could all make plays for themselves or others. And so we'll be interested to see, does he play mostly four still this year, or does he play some three? I know they, like his potential at that spot too, but a lot of competition, of course, up and down the roster for positions. So really just, excited to see. This was a very long-winded answer, but I'm very excited to see how it's all going to shake out.
No, it's fascinating. I mean, we could sit here and talk for hours about the what ifs and the possible lineup combinations.
Yeah.
When you were at Purdue, did you guys do international summer trip at all?
Yeah. So my last year, the summer before my senior year, it was really fun. We got to go to Australia and we played 3 games over there in 3 different cities. And yeah, that was a interesting situation for us as a team. At that time they didn't allow the incoming freshmen to play.
Oh,
So Lewis Jackson, Ryan Smith, John Hart were the 3 incoming freshmen on that team. John Hart ended up redshirting, but Lewis, Ryan, John, they weren't able to play, and then Keaton Grant had offseason knee surgery, so he was out. So it worked really well for me because you take Lewis Jackson and Keaton Grant in particular out of the fold. Those guys, of course, were point guards and guys that were going to be handling the ball a lot. So I was fortunate enough to be able to play quite a bit on that trip, get the ball in my hands some from a point guard standpoint. Um, I wasn't necessarily awesome on that trip, but I had some decent moments. But it was good for the team to be able to go out and play. We played some. One of the teams we played was like all professionals, like all guys in their like late 20s, early 30s, like grown men that we were playing against. Now those grown men play college basketball. You get like 26, 27-year-olds playing college basketball. But yeah, thankfully that new 5-and-5 rule, I think, is going to get rid of the 26-year-olds playing college basketball, which is probably for the best. So yeah, we did that trip to Australia, which was a lot of fun, and it's great to get those games in and face some other competition.
what can you tell listeners of this about those international trips? Because we already know the hot takes are coming. These games are going to be streamed on YouTube, I saw. So if someone has a big day, you're going to hear all the hype. If someone struggles, you're going to, the message boards will be popping. But well, I guess what can you tell listeners about these international trips, some of the preparation for them, some of the focuses, things of that nature from a little bit more of a behind closed doors point of view?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's comparable to how you would look at Purdue when they play their exhibition games. you're not doing detailed scouting reports and preparation like you are for regular season games or tournament games, similar to like the exhibition games Purdue played last year against Kentucky and things of that nature, where you're focused more on yourself. You're trying to execute. The coaches are going to play around with different lineup combinations and try to just see which guys are going to excel and which guys aren't, which lineups might work better than others. Going to give guys plenty of opportunity. You're going to have the minute distribution is going to be different than it would be if it's a game that, like a tournament game or a game that matters. So, but it's all, it's a fun experience. It's obviously you're there to compete, but a lot of these trips you're also there to do some other things outside of the competition, enjoy seeing a different part of the world. Like Australia, we were able to do some snorkeling in the Great Barrier Reef. We went to the Crocodile Hunters Zoo in one of the cities we went to there. In Sydney, we went and checked out the Sydney Opera House. And so, these trips are about more than just the basketball piece of things, but it's obviously something that from a preparation standpoint, you're just going out and trying to focus on yourself as a team and trying to succeed. And I do think this trip, some of the trips, like the trip I talked about, we had a couple guys, Lewis Jackson didn't play, Keaton Grant didn't play. Those two guys were huge parts of our team that year. So obviously tough to get a full gauge for your team when you're missing some pieces. A couple years ago, I remember they went and played and Zach Edey wasn't able to play because he was with the Canadian national team. Obviously, you're not going to get a full picture of what Purdue is going to be like if the National Player of the Year is not present. But I do think that was a good example of where a guy like Trey Kaufman-Renn was able to be the featured post player on that trip and had a lot of success scoring the basketball, getting his opportunities. And I think that ended up being a big key for him his junior and senior year. Once Zach left, he could kind of probably go back and on that experience and be like, I can be the man on, I can be that focal point on the interior and have success. And so there's those little kind of individual experiences for each player that you try to, succeed with the opportunity you're given.
As we discussed, there's a lot of newness and it's the classic, preview magazine talk, but what's one reason that you look at with this team with a good deal of optimism as to why Purdue can put together a really good team, have a really nice season this year?
Yeah, I just think they have a lot of talent, especially in the backcourt. I think Luke Riddell, the true freshman from Mount Vernon, I think he's going to have a chance to be really good right away. Been really impressed with what I've seen from him. Can really shoot the basketball. And then when you got guys like Omer, CJ, and Jakari coming back who have been in the program, I think they're all fully capable of taking big leaps with additional opportunity. I think from a defensive standpoint, that is an area I think this team could certainly take a huge leap compared to how we've been in the past. We love Braden, we love Fletch, we love Trey, but I think everybody, and even those guys would acknowledge that defense wasn't their strong suit, right? That was not the best parts of their game. They did the best they could based on, the skill set they had on that end of the floor, but all those guys were more offensive minded players. And the value you were getting from those guys was, most of that value was being pulled from their offensive game. And so I do think this team likely is going to take a step back offensively from the best offense in the Ken Pom era that we had last year. But I do think we could take quite a bit of a jump defensively when you think about the just defensive versatility we could have on the floor at all times, the switchability, those guys that are a little bit more physical and athletic and can provide some better defensive value. So I do think we can maybe make up for some of the offensive drop-off with some defensive improvement. And I do still think there's enough offensive skill on this team that we could be pretty successful.
And then on the flip side, if we've talked about some front court depth and questions there, anything else that you look at as a main concern that you would like to I guess you can't really see it addressed until the lights come on in November, but some areas that you'll be watching closely with a bit of concern that you'd like to see Purdue prove as the season gets going.
Yeah, I mean, role definition, that was something I touched on. I do think that's going to be That's where I do think this trip is going to be great for them, because they are going to have what appears to be at least their, without maybe potentially one more addition, their full cast of characters. They're definitely going to have their entire backcourt there. And I do think that's kind of the biggest piece, is like that from a role definition standpoint, is figuring out of those backcourt guys, which of those guys is going to separate themselves and become, the guys like Braden and Fletch that are playing 30 minutes a game every night and are having huge roles and are having plays called for them, and the offense is designed around them. I think this trip we're going to, start to find some of those answers, but then of course, as we move into the fall, those answers are going to be huge. And this team is probably one of those teams that really evolves as the season goes along and as guys start to separate themselves and are more successful than others. Those guys are going to get more opportunity. And offensively, I'm definitely, just a little bit concerned to see, are we going to have those guys step out? Sometimes you end up with a situation where all the guys are about the same and nobody's really separating themselves. And that sometimes is, can hurt you as far as having that role definition and having those guys that you really can go to when you need a bucket, late in the shot clock, things of that nature. Offensively, to be successful, more often than not offensively, you need a game changer or two that can cause the other team to be in a disadvantage, right? Somebody that can create, you want to play advantage basketball, whether that's creating a double team in the post, a guy like Zach Edey, Trey Kaufman-Renn, of course, over the years, so great at that. Now, if they double, you're kicking it out, you're playing advantage basketball off long closeouts, rotations, things of that nature. Or a guy like Braden Smith, of course, he was so elite with his ability to play make and ball screen. And oftentimes in one-on-one situations, he's able to create an advantage for you offensively. With this team, the way I look at the personnel at this point, one of my concerns would be, do we have enough guys that can, create advantages, be mismatches for the opposition to where you're going to be able to get high percentage looks, that you're going to be able to put teams in rotations, make the opposition make a decision. Because, if you're constantly taking step back, 18 footers as the shot clock expires because you can't create an advantage, you're not going to be an efficient offense that way. And so, sometimes if you don't have someone who can just maybe create that mismatch because of their one-on-one capabilities, that's where PJ Thompson's probably going to have his hands full this year, maybe more than others, because it's not quite set in stone yet regarding, Antoine West is another guy. I forgot to mention him earlier. He's a huge X factor for this team because he could easily, I think, based on what we've seen so far and what we've heard, be a guy that can create an advantage in one-on-one situations, can be a guy that can be dynamic from a scoring standpoint. And PJ Thompson's going to have to be able to push those right buttons. Coach Painter, of course, in collaboration to try to figure out, okay, if we can't necessarily just throw it to a guy on the block and create an advantage, or if we can't just run a ball scheme with Braden, what sort of other things can we do offensively from a scheme standpoint to create advantages? And we've seen him use guys like Ryan Klein and Carson Edwards running off screens off the ball to create advantages, put defenses in a bind that way. And, I trust PJ and the rest of the staff to be able to, use the pieces we have to be successful offensively.
All right, Bobby, it's time for the question you've been waiting for this whole time. It's the All-Star break. Cubs are hanging on, 11 or 12 games above 500. What do you make of the Cubs so far, and what do they need to do to get back to the postseason and get past the Brewers this year for once?
Yeah, I mean, you and I were talking about this past Purdue basketball team and the roller coaster that was, and it's been a lot like the first half of this baseball season for the Cubs. Lots of highs, but also some lows, and drastic, changes in play from really, really good to really, really poor. And 12 games over 500 at this point in the season, considering all of the injuries they've had, considering the ups and downs, you got to be pretty happy with that. Like you said, the Brewers, unfortunately, being 5 games up in the division and playing really well, makes that 12 games over 500 not feel as good, because you do want to be able to win that division. Because if you don't win your division, you can't get that bye in the first round of the playoffs, which is so critical. Allows you to not only get that automatic advancement in the playoffs, but you can set your pitching rotation, get rest and things of that nature. So luckily though, 5 games, with this, with the number of games left in the season, 5-game deficit in the division, certainly not insurmountable. And hopefully the Cubs can start to get some of these guys back healthy, get some reinforcements. I'm definitely daydreaming of, a September bullpen that's got guys like Ben Brown and Justin Steele, coming out of the pen. Daniel Palencia, get him back. Like those guys, I think could be impactful guys out of the bullpen. And if you get those guys that can come in and go a couple innings, 2-3 innings out of the bullpen, those guys can be super valuable. And maybe that's what Steele or Ben Brown can be. And offensively, PCA, I mean, come on. What more can you say? I mean, this guy, he's legitimately turning into he's like Ken Griffey Jr. Like that's what we're watching. Barry Bonds, Ken Griffey Jr., like that's the kind of dude he's been offensively here as of late. Combine that with his elite center field defense, his base running, Javi Baez and PCA were, I kind of compared them there for a while early in PCA's career because they both were elite base runners, but because of their inability to take walks very much and just the nature of how hard it is to hit for a high average in baseball today with how good the pitching is, if you're not taking your walks, it's tough to be as impactful on the bases if you're not on the bases that often. But now the PCA has taken his walks, he's increased his walk rate by like over 10% from last year. It's been really fun to see him now be able to really impact the game defensively on the bases. And then, he's from a hitting standpoint, he made that swing adjustment and he's got that little toe tap going. It seems to be more under control. He seems to be on time a lot more in the box, and which has allowed him, I think, to spit on those bad pitches that are out of the zone and take those walks. But it's also allowed him to punish mistakes that are in the zone. And he's one of those guys that he can't miss. Right when his AB is up, I got 5 kids at home, but if I'm doing something with them and I see PCA's up, it's like, all right, we got to take a slight break here. I got to lock in on this AB. Because he's so fun to watch and you just think something special is going to happen every time he's at the plate.
I love it. Well, hopefully it's a good second half here and gives you and Matt Painter a lot to talk about when practices get started there in September and October.
No doubt. I think about 90% of Coach Painter and I's conversations are about the Cubs. So, yep, we're definitely going to be able to hopefully have some fun conversations talk about this fall.
Well, Bobby, I appreciate you coming on. I know it's not quite as exciting as your appearances on the Locked On Cubs podcast, a podcast you and I are both big fans of, but I appreciate you coming on, spending some time with me. I know our listeners enjoy it, and I appreciate all you do and looking forward to hearing you and Rob Blackman on the call again this winter from Mackey Arena.
Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Always fun to talk Purdue basketball. Of course, you and I are both big Cubs fans, and it's fun to chat about the Cubs too. And really excited for this upcoming basketball season to get on the radio call with Rob Blackman, Wes Scott, our producer. Looking forward to seeing all these new guys, right, and seeing what we have to offer. I think this team can definitely exceed expectations, and it's always fun kind of having those unknowns and seeing what will happen.
Love it. Thanks, Bobby.
Thanks, Jordan.